The Miopta Optica 6 3-18 by 50. In first focal plane with the MRAD 1 reticle as seen here, this is, in my opinion, the perfect balance between overall price, performance, and durability. It has served me extremely well for a very long time and will continue to do so. But as great as this is, I've had a long-standing question with it. Is its now discontinued larger brother, the 3-18 by 56, any better? Let's find out. And we can find out because a very gracious Anon on Reddit sent this over to me for review. On the left throughout this entire video will be the by 50. On the right will be by the 56. These two are identical in every way, shape, or form with the exception of the front objective being a 50mm or 56mm. Right away we can already see that the 56mm version on the right has a darker looking image. The reticles are the same and the illumination are indeed the same. One of the reasons that I was able to discover why they discontinued the 56mm version was the illumination. They say it bleeds out, but so far on this model, that doesn't seem to be the case. As far as the tracking performance on these two, well, they track basically identical to one another. On a 4x4 going to the left, you can see that they line up basically perfect, maybe a half a click off, which in the grand scheme of things is not that much. But they both return to zero very well, and they will climb 10mm plus about a click, so about 1% off, which is not uncommon even on very expensive scopes. These can be had for the $700 to $800 price point, though you can find them periodically on sale for somewhere in the sixes. And for me, that is a very good price. While we're on the topic of price, let me say this. There are more expensive options and there are less expensive options. Some will perform better, some will perform worse, but typically they're going to perform roughly what they are for their price point, or at least so we would hope. This Miopta really does strike a very fine balance as far as its overall performance for the price. It's a great blend of everything. Yeah, you can spend $2,000 on a 3-18 or something around that same magnification range, but is it really worth 3 times the price? Maybe it's only worth twice the price. So when I say that this is still my go-to, it is for a number of reasons. 1, it's the price that I'm willing to pay for it because I bought it. 2, it has all the features that I'm looking for in MPVO. A capped windage, a locking elevation, a really good usable first focal plane reticle that's very easy to pick up either at 3x or 18x, or even here at an indicated 10x. So I'm going to take a slight segue. Do you really notice the difference between these two images, other than the 56mm version being a little bit darker? Maybe the contrast is a little bit better. It really shows the darker areas with a little bit more vibrancy or life. But keep in mind, I did film all of these segments with the 50mm version first before filming the 56mm version. But only a couple minutes has passed, so really the light shouldn't change all that much. But finishing up quickly about the pros and what I like about this thing, the reticle is definitely one of them. Whether you're at 3x, 10x, or now finally at 18x, it's very easy to pick up, find the center, and read it, and use it. If you're using this appropriately, having a capped windage and a locking elevation turret is basically perfect. You never have to worry about things getting bumped out of whack. As far as the illumination goes, it's good enough when you need it in a darker environment. But again, because this reticle is so easy to pick up, you don't really need it all that often. Moving on from me loving this thing so much, comparing these two side by side really shows a couple of key differences. Or does it? I really expected by the 56 version that we would have a much larger view looking through it, but in fact we have the exact same size. And as we shift off center here at 18x, both of them exude very sharp reticles and images all the way up till you can't look through the thing anymore. So that's a really good performance. The same thing can be said here at 10x. Both of these images look great, but again, the 56mm version does look a little bit darker. I'm not saying that the image looks worse, it just has a slightly different tone to it. I do think it's a little bit easier picking up things in the shadows, but I really like how the 50mm version has a brighter sense to it. You get behind the scope at any magnification in almost any environment, and it just has a nicer looking image to it. Finally, stepping them down to their minimum magnification here at 3x, they both have basically the exact same image. Edge-to-edge sharpness on both of them are very good, as well as the center. And when we go off-center on both of these at 3x, they both still look really good and have a very forgiving eye box. Speaking of eye box, let's get straight into it. And here at small bore, we play around with 3x. They both have very similar eye boxes, but I will give it a slight edge to the 56mm version, especially when we get out to 1,000 yards and we dial up for elevation. The exit pupil seems to shift a little bit less, but the amount that it does on the 50 is so minuscule you almost can't even pick it up. I really don't know what I was expecting between these two. The 50mm version performs extremely well, but I was kind of wondering if the 56mm version would perform any better, and thus the whole reason for this video. But I guess, truth be told, there aren't that many differences between these two. But let's keep on digging, shall we? As mentioned earlier, I filmed the 50mm version first, followed by the 56. And unfortunately, even though there's only about 2 minutes between shoots, here when it's twilight like this, you all know how quickly it can get dark once the sun has basically set. So unfortunately, the 56mm version is going to have much less ambient light, which you could very clearly see already starting out at 3x. It's not an ideal comparison, but I can tell you from my personal experience here, the 56mm version does let in a tiny bit more light, but it's so inconsequential that you probably won't even notice it unless you had both of these side by side at the exact same time and day. And even then, you really have to look for it to notice it. At 1,000 yards, though, maybe, surely, there will be a difference between these two. Well, these are both at 18x and with 0 mils of added elevation, and I can't really tell much of a difference, if any at all. But when we add 10 mils of elevation to both of these simultaneously, you will see that the bottom edge of the 50mm version is a little bit more out of focus and a little bit darker. The 56mm version did not need any adjusting. So if you are dialing this up, you do have to adjust your cheek weld, but slightly, like a 1/16 of an inch off at most. So really, again, not the end of the world. I'm honestly struggling to find the differences between these two. Every once in a while, you can and will notice some chromatic aberration on both of them. And when you do, I'd say the 56mm version is a little bit more harsh than the 50mm version. But again, by such a small amount that it really begs the question, does it even really matter at all? Truth be told, for many people, chromatic aberration isn't that much of an issue. And for me, it can be a nuisance, but when it's really glaringly bad. The thing is, both of these only show it when you're looking at targets like this. Around that bullseye, you'll see a little bit of chromatic aberration creep in, but it's so little, you honestly have to look for it to even notice that it's there. I love my Miopta Optica 6 3-18x50. It has served me very well for a very long time, and I'm not the only one that's had good experiences with them. There's a gentleman on rockslide.com that does long-term, very hard testing of scopes, and the Miopta Optica 6, in fact, this exact scope, not this one, but the exact model that I have on the left, passed with all flying colors, which is very nice to see when someone really abuses the ever-loving crap out of something and it just keeps on working. Every time I've gotten behind it, it just works. I never question if it's going to hold zero or track properly or work in any way, shape, or form that's not intended to. And truth be told, what more could you really ask for in a scope? This does go on my go-to rifle. It is zeroed for a particular type of round, and it is something that I do plan on stretching out at farther distances with. For right now, 350 yards is good enough, but I do want to take it out to the limits of the 5.56 cartridge. Now, I did start this video with wondering if the 56mm version was better in any way, shape, or form as opposed to the 50. There are a couple of very minor things. Maybe it's got a little bit better exit pupil as far as shift when you start dialing up for elevation at distance or at higher magnifications. But again, it's such a minute characteristic that you probably won't even notice it when you're behind this thing in a dynamic environment. It does let in a little bit more light in darker environments, but it's not so much more that's going to be worth the extra size and weight up front. Plus, I mean, trying to find one of these brand new is impossible because it's discontinued, and finding them used is literally one in a few thousand. In fact, I've never seen another one of these for sale ever. So when I got the opportunity to reach out to someone that had it, I jumped on it. One area where it does look like the 56mm version is a little bit better than the 550 is here. When we have our focus set on the 180-yard berm, the 100-yard paper target does look a little bit more in focus on the 56mm version. But is that really enough to quantifiably say it's a better scope overall? For me, the answer is no. I'm tried and true with the 3 to 18 by 50. And it's something I've recommended to a lot of people wholeheartedly. No, Miopta did not send me any of these scopes. No, I do not get a kickback from Miopta. In fact, I've written Miopta an email on their website asking them a couple of questions in regards to a possible 2 to 12 Miopta Optica 6 inverse focal plane like this with a couple of minor tweaks. And I'm still waiting for a response a month or so later. Miopta probably doesn't even know that I exist. And I'm perfectly fine with that, because I don't care about making a company look good or feeling good about writing a good review. I care about letting you all know about how something is going to perform and my experiences with it. But not only did the 50mm version perform perfectly fine throughout all of my testing with it here and all of my shooting beforehand and since, but so did the 56mm version. It never let me down, did exactly what I wanted it to for the month or so that I had it, and was genuinely a pleasure to use. Now again, there are other optics of different price points that can perform and will perform differently. For example, I have a Nightforce NX8 2.5 to 20 by 50 at home, and I'll let you guys know right now, it is insanely good, but it's basically 3 times the price of the Miopta. Is it insanely good that it's worth the 3 times the price point? Well, we're going to find that out when we do an independent review of that. But just know that there are other options out there. If you only have a $300 budget, you're not going to get a scope that's going to perform and be as trustworthy as this. But if you have a $2,000 budget, well then you could buy 2 of these and then some, or jump into something as insane as the Nightforce seems to be so far. But that is where I'm going to end this. Is there any real major difference between these two? The answer, shortly, is no. There is no major difference between the two. If you have the option of buying one or the other, does one really stand out better than the other? No, not really. It's up to what I think you can get one of these cheaper for. If you could find one of them cheaper than the other, whether it be used or new, I would go with the cheaper one. Maybe you have an inability to run a 56mm front objective on your setup because you're restricted on your ring height. Well then, that's going to force you to the other one, in which case, it doesn't really matter. They both perform about the same. However, for me, my 50mm version ain't going anywhere anytime soon. And with that, a big thank you to Anon on Reddit for making this video possible. I'm very happy to finally answer the question, is there a difference between the 50 and the 56mm version? The answer is really no. But truth be told, ladies and gentlemen, it's because of you, my lovely viewers, that this video is possible. In fact, the channel keeps on going. So the real thank you goes to all of you. So thank you all very, very much for watching. And as always, see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.